Hey guys, welcome to Turn2, a Hearthstone podcast with Doa and usually Artosis, but not this week. He's super busy, so we just have 3 guests instead of 2, which is pretty awesome. We've got a lot to talk about tonight, and while we have this show too, like in a matter of hours, the new ladder is going to hit NA, and I think a lot of the other servers too, so that is going to be pretty cool as well. But first, let's introduce our guests. A couple players actually just fresh back from ESGN. The tournament is airing right now, and we've got the rivals themselves. Ekop, how's it going, man?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm pretty excited about the ESGN stuff airing right now, and pretty hyped for the final product. Cool. It's awesome so far.
It's been fun to watch. And Monk, you were there as well. How are you doing? Thanks for being on the show this week.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I was there, but I will say that it's been a little more than a while since I've been back.
Wow. That's true.
It's been a bit of a while, yeah.
Freshly aired, I guess. And our final guest of the night, of course, KobayshiMaru. A difficult test for Captain, well, not for Captain Kirk, but for everybody else. But also a guy who runs his own show on iHeartU as well, runs Masterclass. How's it going, man?
It's going really well. Thank you so much for having me on, man. I'm a big fan of Turn2.
Oh, thanks. Well, we have a lot of fun on the show, and I thought we would switch things up a little bit. We've talked a lot about the NA scene and the EU scene over the weeks here on Turn2, but today we're actually going to start off things by talking about the Chinese scene, which is a scene that we haven't talked about too much yet, and Monk is going to help fill us in with a lot of that. Monk, you actually just casted a tournament on the Chinese server just like less than a week ago, right?
Yeah, it was actually within the past 3 or 4 days. It was the Red Bull ELC tournament. Basically what this was, it was a tournament, it was a LAN that had a lot of various games, including Dota, CSGO, and StarCraft 2 even. And the 4th game was Hearthstone, which is pretty incredible. How the participants were determined was that the top 16 players from the Chinese Legend server were invited. So I guess in China, Legend actually means something. So these players were invited. They got, I wouldn't say flown down, but they took a train down to the venue, and they played some Hearthstone in a 16-man tournament.
Huh. Now that's really interesting because like the Legend ladder rankings change like hourly on NA and some of the other servers as well too. So I wonder, when they got that kind of screenshot, who was lucky enough to be up there, I guess. But you said that the player that won that ended up being Calm, who is a former SC2 player, right?
Yeah, Calm, of course, he won WCS 2012 China, which pretty much meant that he was pretty much like one of the top Chinese players in China in 2012. So it's really exciting for this StarCraft 2 player. He immediately transfers to Hearthstone, and he becomes wildly successful in China.
Huh, interesting. So let's take a look at some of these decks here. Now, he ran a Druid Mage Priest, and I just posted that in chat, so you guys can take a look at the decks we're looking at. If you scroll down a little bit on the page, the bottom 3 decks, the Druid Mage and Priest, once again. And it's some interesting stuff, and a lot of it looks like it's kind of a mix of stuff that we saw in the past on NA and EU, but also some kind of weird factors in there as well that we can kind of examine a little bit. So right off the bat, I'm going to throw a question over to KobayshiMaru. All right, tell me how to pronounce that, by the way, because I'm more of a Star Wars guy than a Star Trek guy, and I try, but how do I pronounce that? Tell me.
KobayshiMaru.
KobayshiMaru. Okay, KobayshiMaru. All right, so your opinions on those decks, first of all, and then we'll go over to Ekop.
Sure. Well, the first thing that I'm looking at is the Mage deck, and he's given up an Ice Block for a Spellbreaker. I mean, I think that most of the Mage decks I see, they run 2 Ice Blocks so that they can sort of prolong the death and just aggro you down. And he's like, and this deck's saying, no, I'm so aggro that I'm going to Spellbreak your taunt to continue pushing damage on the board, or maybe Spellbreak something else that's a little scary, just to keep pushing, and I'm only going to, protect myself on 1 turn. Mm-hmm. That's incredibly aggro.
Yeah, a lot of one-ofs, too, in general. 1 Commander, 1 Defender of Argus, 1 Dark Iron Dwarf, 1 Blizzard. I mean, it's just a lot of 1-drops, a lot of tech as well. So it's I don't know, it seems risky,
Yeah.
But what do you think about the other 2 decks? I mean, Priest is looking really old school, actually.
Did the old school priest have the wild pyromancer in there? That looks a little new to me.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about, where it seems like it's a mix of sort of old school deck building plus a couple newer things thrown in. A couple oddball cards, and the Wild Pyromancer is definitely one of those ones that is more of a, I'm sure, recent addition too. But if you look at the rest of the deck, we still have like the Senjin Shield Masters and things like that. So
yeah, for the priest deck, you've got like the Cabal Shadow Priest. You've got a lot of those sort of like, I'm going to use your own stuff to kill your own stuff, kind of that old school frustrate your opponent priest, especially back in the day when mind control was only 8 mana, even though now it's 10.
Right. All right. And so finally we've got that Druid deck as well, which looks to be, I mean, I would say, barring a couple interesting things, probably the most standard out of the three. Throwing in, and it's again, a little bit more old school, Ancient of War in there, as well as the Faceless Manipulator. So stuff from about maybe 3 to 4 weeks ago, and also Ysera as well, which is an addition that not a whole lot of people have been keeping in their Druid decks, but still in this one apparently.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the Yseras in the Druid decks I'm up against. Yeah, the thing I find most interesting about this is the 2 Ancient of Wars and 1 Ancient of Lore. Usually I see the reverse, or 2 of both. These decks, they all seem like they're taking a line and they're pushing it to the edge, which I guess is smart in one regard.
So I wanna throw this over to Ekop now. I know you and I were talking a little bit about this before the show. You have some rather strong opinions on those decks as well, and I tend to agree with it. But I want to hear your piece on these 3 decks.
Okay, the first thing that I noticed was all 3 lists had Blood Knight, which is crazy. I mean, I don't know how many Sunwalkers, Argent Squires, and Argent Commanders those guys play. Maybe even Scarlet Crusaders, but I don't know if Blood Knight is actually viable, especially in a deck that by itself doesn't even run any Divine Shields like this Priest deck.
I wonder if there's maybe a lot of Warlocks with the Argent Squires out there, or something like that, they're thinking of taking, but I don't know.
Yeah, all those decks that you ran did not run any Divine Shields, except with the exception for that mage that only had 1 Argent Commander. So you don't even have your own minions to have Divine Shield, and so you just play generic 3/3s if you don't run into any Divine Shields. So why the hell would you do that? I mean, maybe he predicted a lot of Argent Squires in this meta game, but whatever. The second thing that I noticed is when I was looking at this Priest deck, it just looked to me like, okay, people are still copying Arthos' decks from BlizzCon. I was like, dude, what the hell?
Like,
what the hell is this? I mean, yeah, okay. I mean, there are some additions to that, like Pyromancer and Thoughtsteel, Tinkmaster and stuff like that, but other than that, yeah, I don't know. And the Druid list is something that I would have run. Like the Priest deck is something that I would have run 4 months ago. The Druid deck is something I would run 1 month ago. So those. It seems that China is pretty much behind the meta game.
I continue to kind of see surprising stuff in these decks, like as I look through them a little bit deeper too. Like with going back to the Mage deck for a moment, they actually are running 2 Flame Strikes, which is almost unheard of. I mean, that's generally way too expensive to include in something like that. So that's, I don't know. It's interesting stuff. But so Monk, going back to you, I mean, you casted a lot of these games. Was these 3 decks kind of are indicative of most of the top decks you saw in that tournament, or did you see stuff that was a little bit more like, what we've been seeing lately on the other servers?
Yeah, I think these decks were pretty well representative of all the Chinese decks. A lot of them ran Blood Knights. That was pretty much the biggest difference between the NA scene and the EU scene. There were a lot of different mage secrets, such as Counterspell and Mirror Entity, and those were pretty surprising for the casters. And also, Warlock Giants was very popular in China. It's getting pretty popular in NA and EU, but in China especially, more than half of the Warlock decks were in fact Giants, and because of that, Big Game Hunter was also ran a lot.
Well, Warlock Giants, that was something that, people were playing way early in the beta on NA, like first couple weeks. I remember LS actually running a Warlock Giants deck as like one of the first decks he made. So it's kind of interesting to see sort of come back a little bit too. But now, as far as like how the players were actually playing these decks, it's one thing for the list to be a little bit outdated when you compare them to the other regions. But as far as the decision making for the players and stuff goes, did it look good? I mean, did it look like if they had stuff that was a little bit more up to date that they could, compete with NA and EU?
There were definitely some pretty huge misplays, even in the semis and finals of the tournament. For example, one player, he had the game won. He had his opponent down to about 12, 13 health, and he had a Pyroblast and a Frostbolt in his hand, but he had 9 mana. So instead of just taking him down little by little, he played the Pyroblast, and next turn his opponent, Alexstrasza, back to 15. And then
wow.
The first player had no answer whatsoever. So just
crazy.
It's a pretty big misplay that I think many of the top EU and NA players wouldn't make.
Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer in most cases. But I mean, you never know when nerves is a factor as well too. But that's interesting. All right. Well, I think go ahead. You want to say something?
I was curious about this the Warlock Giants deck. So Monk, are there a lot of standard Warlock aggro decks or let's say Murloc Warlocks as well, or is it just the Warlock Giants that you see?
Well, you can if you post the link in chat, you can see through basically all of the decks that were entered through in the tournament. There were, of course, a lot of aggro decks, Warlock aggro decks that ran the standard 3 Warlock 1-drops, Flame Imp, Blood Imp, Voidwalker, plus Argent Squire, plus sometimes Leper Gnome, sometimes Young Priestess. But I would say that they were definitely a minority compared to the Giants decks. And also, there were no Murloc decks run at this tournament.
Really? Not a single one?
Not a single one, no.
Wow.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because it seems like the aggro Warlock deck, let's say with the Argent Squire, you've got the Blood Knight to deal with that. But then the other thing is if you don't know the deck you're facing, trying to mulligan for the aggro Warlock versus the Giant Warlock seems like a nightmare. It seems like my biggest problem when I'm laddering and I run into a Warlock is I don't know what to mulligan. One, you want to go almost completely in one direction for one and completely in the other if you're getting the Giants.
Yeah, that's one of the tough things about the ladder as well. It seems like it's still mostly aggro lock as far as NA goes right now. Ekop, let's talk about that for a moment. When you run into Warlock on the ladder these days, are you seeing a lot more of the Giants pop up, or is it still mostly aggro?
So on the lower ranks, you can expect to never face Giants.
Yeah.
So the non-legendary ranks, that is. And on legendary, many people play the Giants already. However, you have to always account for aggro decks. So usually when playing against Warlock, I mulligan for anti-aggressive hands. So what was I about to say? Usually when I usually play against the most legendary people more than once. So when I see their name and I see they play Warlock, then I usually know what kind of Warlock they play, so I can adapt to that.
All right, interesting. And I know you're a bit distracted because you're busy watching your American wrestling and everything like that at the same time. That's okay. I know you're a big fan. It's fine. Need that inspiration when you flex your muscles on the ESGN casts and all that, so that's fine.
Yep.
So I guess speaking of ESGN, I kind of want to move on to that because that started airing this week. I'll say anybody have any final comments for the Chinese scene for the tournament, or should we move on?
I'm good.
Okay.
Well, I just want to say that I think one of the reasons China might seem a little far behind NA and EU is because they're a little more isolationist. They don't have like the top NA players and the top EU players talk to each other a lot, and we play each other in tournaments. But China doesn't really have that. It doesn't have we don't see a lot of their Chinese decks at all unless we specifically try to look for them. And I imagine it's the same way the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. It's similar with Korea as well, and I know the last time I checked in with the Korean scene was about a month ago, and they were running pretty wildly different decks than we were seeing on NA and EU too. So there are those kind of isolated regions. But what were you going to say, Ekop?
Yeah, I was also about to say that's a pretty good point that Monk made with the isolation part. So NA and EU interact pretty well together because of the English language, pretty much. EU players watch American streams and vice versa, and China, I think Chinese players always stick to those Chinese streamers, which are not as much. So they don't see as much content as Europeans or Americans would. That's that's just a guess, but I think that's true. So they are behind because of that mostly.
An interesting thing lately is I've actually had a lot of Korean players and esports personalities around here asking me about who the top foreign players are, if I can give them deck lists and things like that. So the Koreans, at least, are starting to be really active in terms of looking at the other regions and kind of picking up the decks, because I think at the top a lot of the players started to realize that they were getting a little bit behind. So I should really look at what people are playing on Korea again lately after everyone's kind of been asking me about that. So.
Yeah, I think looking around is a great way. I mean, when I was having some trouble with, I run Shaman as a main. When I was having some trouble with it, I looked around at other tournaments and other regions and found it an incredibly helpful way to just scan a bunch of deck lists and see what's popular, kind of get a top 5 decks and see what makes sense. And it's how I ended up dropping Wild Pyromancers into my deck.
Okay. I know the last time I checked the Korean scene, they were running a lot of mage decks with Alex Strasza to get people down to 15 health and then, burst them down with spells at that point. So they had a little bit of a different style then, but I should see what they're up to now. But, all right, let's move on. Let's talk about ESGN. We have 2 of our players, actually 2 players that played each other right here on the show. So first, I guess I'll ask kind of about the experiences that you guys had. So, Ekop, how was your ESGN experience? And, of course, I know there's stuff you can't say. Not all the episodes have been aired yet, of course. So, on the first 3 matches, that's kind of where we're through up till now. What was your ESGN experience like?
The ESGN experience was so awesome. I mean, it was so exciting to be there, first of all. There was so much hype about it. And at least from my standpoint, and I really loved to be there. The whole stage and the whole way they did it, how they made it up, it was just so professional on such a higher level than I would have ever imagined, and would have ever experienced. It was a higher level than anything I've ever experienced professionally. It was like a professional sports studio, and it was very exciting to play there. And once you are in that seat, in that battle station or whatever you want to call it, it's like a whole different world. And if you compare it to just playing in front of your computer at your home, it's just so different. You really feel the pressure, and in game 1 against Monk, my heart was racing so fast when I tried to set up for this Alakir play. I couldn't even contain myself. Like I had to take deep breaths and hope I don't get a heart attack or something. It was really crazy. I didn't expect that, but it was super exciting, and I really enjoyed the whole experience. It was also fun to meet Crib and Monk and Stripecrow and Trump as well. Even though I don't really like Trump still, but yeah, whatever.
Whoa, okay. Throwing that one out there. All right. Monk, do you have a good time? Obviously, the match went well, but what was your experience like overall?
Yeah, I thought it was a very enjoyable experience overall. The people over there at ESGN treated us really well. Actually, one story I have is that a representative came from ESGN into our rooms, not our actual hotel rooms, but our practice rooms about every half hour, and asked us, hey, do you need anything? Do you need anything? And sometimes we're like, oh, I think nothing has changed in the past half hour, so we're pretty good with that. But my favorite part of the event was definitely meeting the EU team and just meeting everyone in general. And it was just really nice to put faces, personalities to the IDs like Ekop, Max, and Jimsh, and of course Artosis.
That's awesome. I have a question. Does Trump actually wear that Razor jacket like 24 hours a day right now? Is that or how many does he have? Does he have only one, or does he have like a couple that he kind of cycles through?
I'm not completely sure, but he pretty much does wear it all the time. I'd have to say that.
Okay. Just was curious. All right. So now to kind of shift. All right. Well, we'll get his. Maybe he's in chat. We'll get his opinion on it. But I guess moving over to the viewer side of things, it's been really cool to see it, and I want to get your opinion on this too, Chris, in a moment. But it's been really fun to see it because it's cool to see some really high production value Hearthstone content. I mean, it's cool to see it in an actual studio, with all the lights, with everything else there, with the players, sitting on the bench, and it really kind of makes me think, I mean, we all kind of assumed this already, but yeah, Hearthstone really works well, I think, as a spectator experience. So, KobayshiMaru, what do you think? Do you echo that statement?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. Like, I find myself, when the first episode came out, I didn't know that it was going to be daily. I thought it was going to be once a week. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is so great. I want more right now. And they only played the first set of matches. And then I found out it was going to be daily, and just having the lead in with the news show into this fight night, it just has such a wonderful feel. And yeah, the production value is so high. It's incredibly exciting. Yeah.
We didn't even talk about the news show as well. That is really cool. I mean, just kind of not just Hearthstone, but bringing in all these different types of games.
Yeah, it's like this great opportunity for people to be interested in esports, and then boom, here's this event of this game you might or might not have heard of. It's got high production value. It's got these personalities, and my favorite part was that you got to see the teams interacting. Even like in between matches, you'd have like little shots of them kind of like huddled together talking about what's going on, or little audio bits of them saying, oh, he did that, and oh, maybe we should try this. And even though you don't get a lot of that, just those little snippets is it's really fun and exciting for me as a viewer.
It kind of had a half sporting event, half reality show sort of feel to it, I mean, between the actual games themselves and then kind of the interviews with the players, like you said, the shots of them talking, things like that. Here's one topic I want to bring up that's been a bit of a divisive subject around the ESGN broadcast, but the placard girls. I know it's kind of a touchy subject, but do they seem a bit out of place to you guys? I mean, it's I know they're kind of trying to go for the whole boxing sort of feel, fight night kind of thing. To me, it seems a bit dopey. I don't think it's really necessary. I mean, everybody loves, beautiful women. Obviously, that's a thing that gamers around the world can enjoy. But do we really, need that in an esports type show, or does that bring it to like Spike TV kind of levels of video game shows? Like, what is the intent we really want to go for this esports thing? I want to get your guys' opinions on this because there's been some pretty different ones going around, Reddit and things like that. Go for it, man.
Okay, so here's the thing. Like, I don't understand all those people complaining about the girls. They take up like 5 seconds of the broadcast. Like 5 to 10 seconds of the broadcast. They come in 3 seconds with their number signs and then they're gone. Like, who cares? Honestly, they might as well. It's just you just should consider them as decoration or something, just to make the show prettier. Because that's what they are there for. Like,
oh my God!
Like, what else are they there for? They just are there to make the show prettier, more stylish, and to give it the feel of a real TV show. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're there for, and that's what they contributed to the show, and they did it well. And I don't understand why people would get upset about it. They are there to watch Hearthstone, so they watch Hearthstone. And if they don't enjoy the girls, like, I mean, it doesn't matter because the girls don't take up. The show is not about the girls; it's about Hearthstone.
Yeah, I will agree with that last sentiment. It's about Hearthstone, and I didn't think the girls were. I don't think it made perfect sense, but it also wasn't something that distracted me from all the awesomeness that was the show. The thing I was more interested or more hoping for as the future of this show rolls out, because this is the first go, I know that they recorded it in advance, and as this show moves forward, I'm really looking forward to seeing these fight nights with the decks in the current meta, in the current ladder, with the current patches. That's
Same
my
here.
thing that I'm super, super excited for.
And I want to see a show match between the Placard Girls at the end of the tournament.
Are they the secret?
Make it happen.
They're the secret team members?
All right, Monk, we haven't heard from you yet. What do you think?
Well, I don't think that girls or that women in general are decorations, as quoted by Ekop. But
no, I
think,
mean those girls. The purpose of those girls.
Oh, okay, show. I get it. Okay, just want to make that clear.
Not in general, dude.
No, man, they're there because nobody else could hold that sign. Nobody else could hold those signs except for them. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not that strong.
We need those signs. Girls. We need to know what game it is.
Yeah, but as regarding the girls, I felt a lot of the players also when we were there, like we felt, whoa, what are these girls doing there? Like we didn't expect that to happen. And then also the girls who were at the event, they were just always kind of doing their own little thing and not really interacting with anyone else. And I mean, it kind of did feel that they weren't like in their element, you know, like they kind of didn't belong on the set.
I love Simon Simpatico Avital, by the way. The way he runs this show is beautiful and professional. Hands down. All right, so that was... So that was that. I wanted to touch on that because the thing is there was a whole Reddit thread about this. It was a big part of the conversation, you know, in every day, like in the threads themselves for the days. So it's a topic people are talking about. This is a show about Hearthstone. That was a Hearthstone show. So we got it out of the way there. It's done. Opinions out there. Now, as far as the continuation of this type of thing, I want to go back a little bit to what KobayshiMaru said, where I'd like to see a way for this to become more, come out quicker, you know? Because right now it is fun to see the games, and it is fun to see the production value, but everything is a little bit outdated. And now I guess you can kind of look at that two ways, because one way is that we know it's outdated, you know, and the people watching the show knows it's outdated because they know the meta, they've been playing, they've been hearing us talk about it, you know, we've been playing ourselves, you know, at a high level, we're up to date on this stuff. But I wonder what percentage of the people watching the show are actually, you know, caught up like that, or actually up to date themselves on the meta. So does it really actually matter that much that it's behind? You know, do most viewers even notice? What do you think?
It doesn't matter because we are ahead on the metagame always. So we are the innovate, like those were the guys at Fight Night, the players. There were some of the best players in the world. And we innovate. We define the meta game, at least most of us. And
it's your month ahead anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, people are. I still see people playing BlizzCon decks. And if you take a look at, once again, if you take a look at the Chinese meta game, yeah, we fit right in there. Why not? with those months-old decks. So I don't understand. Like, I mean, it's obviously pretty shitty to watch if. A patch has happened, and that's like the only thing that bothers me, because I see those 2-mana Frost Novas and 3-mana Cone of Golds that aren't even getting played anymore. So yeah, this is the only thing that sucks. But other than that, it doesn't really matter because the decks are still pretty much accurate and can be played like that, and they can still be viable.
All right. What do you think, Monk?
Well, yeah, I have to agree with Ekop with some regards. Like, just mostly it was that there was a patch that happened right after these games were played. In fact, the patch that we played in was only active for 1 week. So we just happened to get in that week-long window where we were playing with the mind control nerfs, but without the mage nerfs. So it was like kind of like a pocket meta. I think, but I have heard from ESGN that they'll be working more closely with Blizzard in the future to ensure that kind of thing doesn't happen again.
Okay, cool. Very cool. All right, opinions on that, KobayshiMaru as well.
Yeah, I guess when I mentioned it earlier, I was referring to the patch and hoping that in the future it isn't one of those things where They catch them in these pocket patches. But yeah, I'm glad ESGN's talking to Blizzard, and from an overall standpoint, that was the only thing that I was wishing were different to make this broadcast the 10 out of 10 that it can be. But still, it's incredibly fun, and it's great to see the best of the best playing and the moves they're making and learning from the pros.
Yeah, and I think the thing too is like over time there's going to be less patches happening too, you know, as the game gets more polished. So there'll be hopefully less chance of that happening as well. But I'm excited to watch this stuff. I've had to watch the VODs every morning because it's on at like 5 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. my time. So I always have to like wake up and like not check social media and just kind of catch the VODs with it. But it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. So let's see. Any more thoughts on ESGN before we move on?
Oh yeah, people were commenting like this is super cringe-worthy, and I've never cringed so much in my life. Honestly, guys, if you are there, if you were there in my place, then you probably wouldn't have done a better job as well. Like it was a completely new situation for almost all of us, with the exception of Artosis, I guess. And yeah, it was like a completely new experience for everyone. So if I want to see anyone else do that and not be super awkward.
I know I've never been part of a cringe moment on the internet, so I don't know what you're talking about, man.
And it wasn't even that cringeworthy. Like we acted pretty normal.
It wasn't. I mean, that's the thing. It's like when people say, you know, cringeworthy for stuff like that, what are they expecting? It's a show about a, you know, electronic video game card game. Like what do you really expect, guys? So I always think that's kind of funny, but yeah, I'm sure over time, Ekop, you'll do nothing but charm people on that show.
or
maybe scare them a little bit, actually.
Or make them hate me even more. That's what I'm hoping.
That's right. You can cultivate your WWE persona on the show. Like I was talking to you about this before the show too. Next time I think you need to take it to the next level, and you need a leopard skin sort of vest and like some sort of facial tattoo and a weapon of some kind. I don't know what, but
steel chair.
You can figure that one out. A steel chair, yeah, man.
That's great.
Good. All right. So let's move on. There's a deck I want to talk about, or a couple decks actually, and this has come out of one of the recent EU Mana Grind tournaments, and probably in a couple other places as well. I'm putting a link in chat right now with some of those decks, but I want to have you guys take a look at the mage decks in second and third place, because this is it's something that's kind of coming back a little bit, and it's really interesting to me, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this as well too. But the kind of hyper aggro mage decks, especially CAXX, I'm not sure how you say its name, if it's Cox, who knows? But that really, really hyper aggro kind of stuff, where you're getting people bursted down with Ice Lance, Frostbolt combos, things like that, getting people to within that Pyroblast range. It's really, really good versus Druid, especially, and seems like it's pretty strong versus Rogue too. But I have seen the ladder, and I'm talking like rank 3 to 5, where I've kind of been floating at for the last couple weeks. It has just flooded that part of the ladder, and I've had to change up a lot of what I'm playing just to kind of combat that. So, what do you guys think? I'm seeing the Cox chat and spam in chat right now. It's very rewarding. Let's go to KobayshiMaru first. What do you think about the mage decks,
yes.
man?
All Cox aside, I think this deck's a pain in the butt. I really don't like it. As in, I don't like playing against it. It's smart though. I have to say it kind of reminds me of the rundown decks that you see with the Warlocks. Is that the idea is you hope to get someone who's not ready for it, in which case you win. And if they are ready for it, it seems like a coin flip. So it's overall better than a coin flip. So if you're trying to grind up the ladder, and you've got those pyros and fireballs and and such, and the ice lances, like you're gonna do really well. And I do not like playing this against this deck.
Yeah. Monk, what do you think?
Yeah, I think after a class is nerfed, people tend to undervalue it a lot. We can see, for example, when the first wave of Rogue nerfs happened, almost no one played Rogue. And then a few weeks later, Rogue became one of the best classes there is. So I think Mage is currently a little underrated right now. and people have been adapting to the Blizzard, the Cone of Cold, all those freeze nerfs. And one of the adaptations is they add Ice Block to all the other all the mage decks, even the aggro mage decks. It kind of replaces Blizzard in that Blizzard used to give you one extra turn to try to pyroblast your opponent down, and whereas now Ice Block fulfills that role. And I'd also want to talk about the Cold Light Oracles. Those were in some of our older decks, but the reason we stopped using them in mage decks was, and of course, when I say we, I'm talking about my team, Liquid Value. In our decks, we used to run Cold Light Oracle, but we didn't use them because we got rid of them because everyone else was running mage and everyone else was running mage counter decks in an environment where mage was so strong. And when you're playing against other mages and other mage counter decks, you actually don't want them to draw extra cards because usually that's even worse that ends up worse in your situation. So those are the two main cards that I think have become better in this new metagame.
Okay. KobayshiMaru, what do you think? Have you been seeing this one a lot? Oh, I'm sorry, Ekop. We're going the other way around.
Yeah,
You've already talked.
Other way around.
Ekop,
Yes.
your turn.
Those are Cold Light Oracles. Yeah, they are a part that can play a role in this mage deck that uses spells to burst your opponent out. There are two kinds of aggressive mage decks. One is the one that is showcased here with the ice lances and much more spells. The other one is that one that our team plays is the one with more minion-based aggression. We kind of feel that minion-based aggression is the way to go because spell-based aggression can be countered too easily, or they can be pretty bad against just aggressive decks because the mage AoE got nerfed. Frost Nova, Cone of Cold, and Blizzard. Like pre-patch, like before the nerf, the deck would have probably been better because of the better AoE. However, now I think it's just not good enough against minion-based aggression. So you kind of want to have the mirror matchup when it comes to minion on minions battles, and then just have the edge with the reach with the pyroblast. So yeah, I prefer the minion-based aggressive mage deck more than the spell-based one.
I think in the end that one is going to be a little bit more solid, especially in legendary and some of the higher tiers. These mage decks, the aggro ones that we posted, the ones that we're looking at right now, are certainly good. Like KobayshiMaru said, for grinding your way up the ladder. Like if you're just starting your rank 25 and you want to get a bunch of wins, that's a good deck to use. I mean, you're going to play a lot of games quickly, and you're going to win a lot of them with that too, because it is a deck that kind of plays itself. You're just like, oh, I want cards, and now I just cast spells on people. You don't have to do a lot of thinking per se to play that one. But I started hitting it a ton. It's annoying to play against. I ended up switching to a really hyper aggro warlock deck and a really slow healing paladin deck, and both of those ended up working pretty well against that. And after that, I didn't really have as much problem with the mages. But so let's talk about that for a moment. Is that Ekop? Is that kind of what you've been running too? What have you been running against it?
So the spell-based mage deck is also not only countered by very fast aggressive minion-based decks, but also can be countered by heal spells, as you mentioned, like paladin heals and druids with healing touch maybe. And because the way how the heals work, they work like a counter to those burn spells, and they sometimes even counter more than one. And minions you cannot counter with heal spells because minions stay on the board and they keep they keep doing damage, and burn spells are no like heal is not able to counteract that. Not just like heal would counteract those burn spells. So against you, as you mentioned, warlock aggro and paladin heal decks are probably the way to go against those kind of mage decks.
Okay. Monk, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree. If you look at some of the damage spells versus some of the healing spells, for example, Fireball does 6 damage for 4 mana, and a paladin card, Holy Light, heals 6 damage for 2 mana. So you're going to be way more efficient with the healing spells all the time versus the damage spell. So you're gonna, for that 2 mana you save, you're gonna be able to put more mana onto the board, gain more board control, and then pressure your opponent that way. So yeah, healing spells and aggro decks, especially Warlock aggro decks, are the way to go against those particular decks, the mage ones.
Yeah, definitely Warlock. I do prefer the Warlock aggro decks. I prefer aggro in general, but Warlock especially, I mean, you're just not going to get a bad starting hand. You're not going to have a problem really with anything they're going to throw at you because they don't have AoE, so they're not going to be able to stop your minions. Kind of like what Ekop was saying early on, is that getting those aggressive minions out there against a deck like that, you really kind of have very little to worry about. And then if they end up frostbolting something or fireballing something on the board, you feel great because you know that's going to be probably, that's almost a win really if they ended up using some of their direct damage on your minions, because then that means they probably aren't going to have enough to finish you off. KobayshiMaru, what do you think? Have you been hitting that deck a lot, and if so, what have you been running against it?
Yeah, well, I tend to run my shaman against it, and that's my main. Not because it's a good deck against it. It tends to lose a bit to it, but usually as well, I've got enough minions in a really quick start that I can get them down 50% of the time and hit them before they hit me. I think Ekop's absolutely right. With a spell-based damage setup, you really want to have healing, and I've got a druid deck that I kind of took from Strife Crow that I like, that's got healing, and that does decent, as well as, you know, all the other decks you guys mentioned. I think those are absolutely the way to go.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to see decks like this come up again, and it is fun to play. I mean, it's a fun deck to play, so it's certainly got a place in Hearthstone, but it's only going to get you so far, you know, and there are, as you move up through the ladder too, you're going to kind of go through different decks and different phases really in your own play, and you have to be prepared to switch things up a little bit rather. And that kind of brings me to my next question, which is something we kind of like to touch on every episode, but just kind of what are people playing right now and why on the ladder? And let's just start off with Monk. What are you playing on the ladder right now?
I'm trying different versions. Sorry, I'm trying different versions of warrior and even priest. I think,
Really?
yeah, I think people, in terms of warrior, I think everyone's trying out these OTK styles with Worgen, with Alex Straza, with Mountain Giants, and I think people are focusing on the wrong types of things with warrior. I think the strength of the warrior is not the OTK factor with the charge and the Warsong Commander, but that part is just so flashy that everyone tends to go like, "Oh my God, that's so imbalanced." I think the real strength of the warrior is in their various removal spells that are often very efficient, such as Execute. Execute is a card that kind of doesn't really follow the rules of the game. It's kind of like Shadow Word Pain when everyone considered that imbalanced. And also cards like Cleave, Fiery War Axe, those are super effective against early aggro minions. So you have these removal spells such as the aforementioned Cleave and Fiery War Axe that are good against aggro. You have Execute, and you have stuff like Shield Slam that are good against that are really good removal against heavy creatures like druid creatures. And it's really the best of both worlds. And also you have just so many of them. There's like 12 or so spells you can cram into your warrior deck that can just basically take care of everything.
Yeah, I mean, what was it, about 2 or 3 months ago now? Warrior got that buff with a lot of their cards got the draw element added to it as well. And that's kind of really helped a lot of that warrior control stuff out, I thought anyway.
Those cards aren't really played anyway in the decks, so those buffs don't really matter for those decks.
Okay.
Nobody's playing Commanding Shout or what was the other one? Frothing Berserker, something like that. Yeah. Like those cards got buffs, right?
All right.
I tried Commanding Shout once in with Wild Pyro, but I just found it a bit too gimmicky. Like if you didn't have a Wild Pyro and you had a Commanding Shout, the Commanding Shout was basically pretty much a dead card.
Thanks for refreshing my memory. I couldn't remember which cards it was. I haven't played Warrior in a long time. So, Ekop, let's go to you then. What decks are you playing?
Currently, I'm playing a lot of Control Warlock and also Control Warrior. So yeah, those are the decks I'm leaning towards too. I kind of stepped away from the Druid that I used to a huge success to get to Legendary and to get to Legendary rank 1. But yeah, Druid has kind of failed me recently simply because Warlock control is getting more popular now, which is a very bad matchup for the Druid. And also Warrior control is also getting more and more popular. Because a friend of mine, Myri, also got Legendary rank 1 with that Warrior control. So yeah, Warrior is getting more and more popular, that's for sure. The efficient removal spells, as Monk mentioned. And in my opinion, Warrior control is the new Druid control. Aggressive decks are also still viable. I mean, I play Mage here and there, and I also tried my luck with Murlocs. Yeah, I finally gave in to the Murgle. But yeah, those decks. I mean, I don't really like Murlocs, and Mage is always good, has always been good, and will always be good. I think, unless they nerf Pyroblast.
Yeah, well, supposedly. We'll see if I would imagine that nerf for Pyroblast is probably coming. There's been a lot of rumors out there that it's going to be going to 9 mana, and I think that'd be fairly appropriate. That was supposed to spawn some sort of reaction from somebody, but apparently
not. God.
All right.
Well, I for one would love that. I'm not a fan of being able to get pyroed and then hit for the single point of damage from the hero ability or another spell. So I would welcome that. I'm just not going to hold my breath.
All right. What have you been playing lately on the ladder?
I've been playing a lot of Druid and my Shaman main, and I've noticed that I can't bring myself to play a Murloc deck, but that doesn't mean I don't see them every day.
Good man.
Yeah, thank you. And so when I'm facing the rundown decks, I've got a lot of the early game, like Argent Squire, Stormforge Axe, Loot Hoarder, Novice Engineer, Wild Pyromancer, Lightning Storm to deal with that. And then for the late game, I've got Tinkmaster, Faceless Manipulator, Sylvanas, and then the powerful Fire Elementals. I don't like the Earth Elementals at all. And so I kind of have manipulated my deck so that I can deal with the early game decks and the late game decks, but that leaves me very open to getting crushed by the mid-range, especially the mid-range rogues. So it's kind of a good thing about Hearthstone, though, is that like you build a deck to deal with something, then it leaves you vulnerable to something else. It's a nice little like rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, there's always like a bit of a trade-off no matter what deck you pick. You're always going to hit that counter at some point. I've been running a lot of the hyper aggro Warlock with like Leper Gnomes and everything in there, and I've also been running, let's see, well, I was running Frost Giants for a while, but that's kind of, I've given up on that about a week ago. But then the mid-range Druid deck, the one I've been playing the most lately has been Strife Crow's Druid deck. I've really had a lot of fun with that, but that one's starting to get countered a bit. It's you meet a lot of those decks that are like the really aggressive Mage deck that does really well against the Strife Crow kind of mid-range control-ish sort of Druid deck. But the one that I've been having the most fun with though on ladder lately is I've been running a really aggro Shaman deck actually that runs a lot of charge and one Wind Fury actually too, one Bloodlust, one Wind Fury. And so you try to do something like, Rockbiter Weapon plus Frost or plus Wolf Rider plus Wind Fury, and you hit for like 10 damage with that. And you can be very explosive with it. So I don't think it's the best deck ever, but it's doing pretty well so far. And I'd like to refine it a bit.
How often would you say you get those win conditions and those combos in that deck? Because that sort of seems to be
pretty
the clutch.
Often.
Yeah,
the thing is there's a lot of different ways to combo it. I mean, you can also do like Rockbiter Weapon plus Doomhammer as well. That's another 10 damage turn, and you've got things like Hex, to reduce the blockers to where you can manage them very easily, and things like that too. So it's working pretty good, but it seems consistent enough that it's getting me wins, and I'm like bouncing around between rank 3 and 5 on the ladder right now. So
that sounds like a great deck, especially if you have something early in there like Argent Squire to run a Tinkmaster, so that if you get that Argent Squire in with the shield, they take the shield away. You have the opportunity to turn it into a 5/5 for basically no loss if you don't. And then next turn, you can give it Wind Fury and a Rockbiter, and boom.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got like a Leroy in there as well. So Leroy, Rockbiter, Wind Fury, that's a ton of damage coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's fun. So, okay, I think that's going to pretty much do it for the show this week. So let's go ahead and go through, do some shout-outs. Ekop, you look like you're ready to fall asleep there anyway right now. So go ahead and go first.
Shout out goes out to all of Team Dogger House, especially to Max, aka Nux, aka Cancer Max. Thanks for all your helpful insight in the chat. And yeah, shout out to ESGN for hosting this awesome event. Fight Night is amazing. I can't wait to do more of that stuff. And yeah, be sure to watch it daily on Twitch TV/ESGN_TV. Starts 9:30 p.m. European time.
All right, awesome. Monk, your turn.
I'm just gonna mirror Ekop's shout out. Shout out to my team, Liquid Value, the opposing NA team, to Doggy House, Doge House. Shout out to Nix, aka Cancer Nix, aka whatever, for being such a great guy in the chat. And also, check out Team Liquid for all our wonderful articles. And we'll have a lot of exciting stuff coming up soon, so watch out for that. And finally, please cheer for me. I hope to show you good games. Please, and I will practice harder in the future.
All right, KobayshiMaru.
Yeah, thank you so much, Doa, for having me on. This has been a blast. Shout out to you for being a great host. And for Artosis, who's not here, we miss you. We wish you were here. You're here in spirit always. And also,
right.
Also want to say shout out to iHeartU. It's a great site. And on that site, you can find many great articles and links to my show, Masterclass, with my co-host Tarn. It's a show where we play, we strategize, and we explore the game of Hearthstone. And it's Monday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitch. And you can also find updates on Twitter. Both of those are at KobayshiMaru, as it's spelled right there under my picture. And if you're on YouTube, you can find me at CNEGRIN. It's where all my videos are. And to Monk and to Ekop, it's been a lot of fun. And to everybody out there watching, thanks a lot. Much appreciated.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on the show, guys. Thanks to you three, first of all, especially to Monk and KobayshiMaru for being up so early in the morning in the U.S. I know it was tough, but I appreciate the effort, guys. Hopefully my co-host Artosis will be back next week. I think he probably will be, so we all miss him as well. Thanks to Simon Simpatico Abital for running the show and putting up random pictures at random times, and then I don't see it until it's like up on the stream. But it's fun. It's fun. And definitely check out iHeartU. Yeah, a lot of good stuff on the site. A lot of great shows, a lot of great articles as well. And the forums are a ton of fun to post in and discuss things. So thanks for watching, guys. More Turn 2 next week. King of the Hill coming back next week as well. So until then, play a lot of Hearthstone, and we'll see you next time.
Woof.